Hello class, this lesson is going to focus on the basics of Biblical Hebrew textbook chapter 13, which is going to be talking about the cal-perfect strong verbs. We'll look at some more cal-perfect verbs and the weak verbs in chapter 14. So in our last session, what we looked at just a basic overview of the verbs. So here we're going to start looking at that cal stem, or the normal stem. And so we're going to look at the meaning of the cal stem, its basic function, that it is in its perfect form, suffixed conjugation. And then we're going to look at the basic paradigm. The paradigm is just what it's going to look like in first, second, and third person. And then also in its gender and different numbers. Then we're going to talk about very briefly stative verbs, and then we're going to look at the negative particle low. Most of our time is going to be spent on the cal-perfect strong verb, and that's really what you want to take away from this. So the cal stem, if you remember, there are 7 main stems in Hebrew. The cal stem comprises almost 70% of the verbs that are found in the Old Testament. So it is the most common, and so you can see 50,000 of the roughly 72,000 stems that are used in frequency. Almost 70% are cal verbs. The cal stems are in active voice and have simple action. They're not nuanced like a reflexive, like the hith-pile stem. And the simple action of the cal is further divided into transitive, intransitive, and stative. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but we'll see it in the textbook as well in greater detail. Transitive verbs may take a direct object. So the prophet wrote the book, right? So that's the transitive. Intransitive verbs cannot take a direct object. The king perished in battle, right? So the book is the object. The prophet wrote the book. Here, there isn't a direct object. And then you've got the stative. Stative cannot take a direct object as well. The priest is old. It's, again, making a statement about that. We'll look at the stative forms in just a little bit with some of the verbs. So as we're thinking about the cal-perfect conjugation and the perfect conjugation in general, it's also sometimes called the suffixed conjugation. And that is because things will attach at the end of the word, at the end of the verb. So we've seen things attach at the end before, like when we've had the plural endings for things. So the eem ending and the oath ending, and even the feminine singular ah ending at the end of things. So here in this verbal pattern, this verbal form, and this verbal conjugation, we will see things suffixed to the end to indicate person, number, and gender. Verbal aspect in the perfect signifies action, with its conclusion envisioned in the mind of the speaker and the writer. To state it differently, it's completed action, whether in the past, present, or in the future. In general, while the textbook talks about how it's often translated in the present tense, and that is true, we'll usually, just for its gloss translation, give a simple past tense reckoning, like he studied, or he has studied, or he will have studied. So just a simple past tense. It can also be used in the present, he is wise. So the cal-perfect in the strong kind of paradigm is what we're going to do is we're going to look at this chart here. This is the paradigm chart, is what it's called. And we're going to see what the third masculine singular, the third feminine singular, all the way down to the one common plural, first common plural, is going to look like. So if you want to say he killed, right, you would say katal. Katal. And that is just the simple he killed. It's third masculine singular, meaning like a male, a singular male. And you're trying to state that in third person, he committed this crime, right? He killed. That's how you'd say it, katal. If you want to say she killed, it's katala. If you want to say you killed, it's katalta. And it's weird because all of the Hebrew grammars, they use this word katal, as the basic paradigm, and it means kill. The reason why this is used is because this is just such a easy verb to see how all of the vowel pointings around it are working. So, in fact, the cal perfect is even known as the cal catal, which is just the third masculine singular form. So sometimes it will be called the imperfect or the suffixed verb, or actually even more commonly in modern grammars, they'll often refer to it as the cal catal verb. So the verb, this whole conjugation will be called the catal, which is just the third masculine singular of this particular paradigm. So catal, catala, catalta, catalt, catalti, catalu, cataltim, cataltin, catalnu. So each one of those, you should. I mean, it says here, memorize it like a robot. I had to memorize this to where I could not only recite it, but I could also reproduce it with even all of the little accents and the metheg. That's that little, that's the little slash right here. If you remember, we talked about the metheg early on in the textbook. So, catal, catala, catalta, catalt, catalti, catalu, cataltim, cataltin, catalnu. So, we killed, catalnu, right? You killed, and you're talking about masculine plural, cataltim, right? So that's how we use those verbs. So if you wanted to say like Moses killed, you'd say catal, Moshe, right? Moses' name, and then like the Egyptian taskmaster, right? So in Exodus when he does that. So Moses did that action. Remember, in Hebrew, it's verb, subject, object. Is how it's frequently rendered. So here are some other verbs that are a little bit less crazy, right, than to kill. So you've got the word yashav, to dwell, or the word zakar, to remember, or the word kathav, to write, or the word shamar, to keep, and so on and so forth. So you've got, let's just look at yashav. So if you wanted to say he dwelt, you'd say yashav. If you wanted to say she dwelt, yashava, yashava. Remember that metheg tells you that that's a kametz and not a kametz hatuf, so that's a vocal schwa. So yashava. So she dwelt, right? If you want to say you masculine singular dwelt, yashavta. If you want to say you feminine singular or feminine, you feminine singular second person dwelt, yashavt. It's like yashavt. They're both silent schwas. Neither of them are vocal. Yashavti is I dwelt, first common singular, and of course you're only going to see the first person in direct speech, right? When somebody's speaking about themselves. And then the 3CP, third common plural. So within the cal perfect stem, there is only a common plural, whether it's male or female. It'll only have this form. So it could be a group of men, and it would have this form. It could be a group of women, it would have this form. It could be a group of men and women, and it would be yashavu, yashavu. It's got that u ending. So if you zakaru on the word zakar, to remember. So basic, simple past tense is how we're going to translate the gloss of these words. You can look at the other paradigms. You'll see that they follow that same basic root. Some patterns that follow the root for the most part, but have a little bit of an idiosyncrasy, are words that end. One of them is a word that ends in tau. So instead of having the tau there with like in the second masculine singular, second feminine singular, first common singular, and then so all of the second persons, and then the first common singular. So instead of having that tau there, and then having another tau, what it's going to do is you're just going to end up seeing, you're just going to have a dagesh forte there and the doubling of that tau. So the same pattern exists. It just, instead of two taus next to each other, you're just going to have the first tau with the dagesh forte. And then you're going to know that you also pronounce this with the hard T. So karata, right? So karatta, right? So it's the same. It's just that those two taus are going into one consonant, and then it's going to give it the dagesh forte. So same pattern, and it's only going to be in these. So just know to be able to recognize that. It's one of the idiosyncrasies. Verbal roots ending in noon. So when you've got for instance, if you've got the first common singular, the new ending there, you're just going to have so when a verbal root ending in noon receives a sufformative or a suffix beginning with noon or tau, the two consonants may become one consonant with the Dagash forte. So shakan, right? So you see shakanu, right? So same basic principle there. Nathan, which is to give, nathanti, it becomes nathati. So you've got the noon assimilating into the tau there. In the shakan, becoming shakanu, you've just got the doubling of the noon. In this one, you've got the noon, what is called assimilating into the tau. Nathati. Now, Nathan is a very common word, and you just kind of get used to seeing that. Here I want to talk briefly about statives. Don't spend too much time focusing or worrying about statives. The textbook talks about these. A stative verb describes a state or condition kind of the subject, like he is old or she is wise, as it talks about in the textbook, rather than describing a verbal action like he wrote or something like that. Stative verbs can be classified as the pathic stative, the tsere stative, or the holum stative. So those pathic statives are just spelled with the regular, is spelled just like the regular strong verb, right? So you would know it then from context. So spelled like the regular strong verb. The tsere stative takes the tsere, right, under that middle sufformative, under that middle radical. That's what it's going to look like in the third masculine singular form, and then in all other forms, it's spelled just like the regular verb. And so that's just what it's going to look like. And then the holum stative, an O-class vowel appears throughout the paradigm. So you've got the kemetz hatuf and then the holum there. So you're going to see that appear throughout. So again, just think of the stative in those terms, to where instead of it's describing kind of the state or being or condition of something or someone. So instead of saying like she, did something, it would be like she is wise or he is wise. You'll know it from the context. You'll know it from the context of what's going on. So here's just a paradigm chart with some stative verbs showing you that they follow the pattern of kind of the regular, just the regular cal perfect. They just look slightly different in some of the forms. So look where it has red. That's where it's going to be just maybe slightly different. Not a big deal. You'll know it from context. Don't spend most of your time on this. After you feel like you understand the paradigm, katal, katala, katalta, katalt, katali, right? After you feel like you've got that down, then come to this. Stative verbs and adjectives are closely related to the corresponding adjectives. The difference between a stative verb and its corresponding adjective is that one is inflected as a verb and the other as an adjective. So you see to be heavy, right? Or the word heavy, kaved, they're spelled the same way. But even though they're spelled the same way, you're going to know them from context. All right, again, don't spend a whole lot of time on those. So when I talk about parsing, and I talk about like a parsing chart or a paradigm chart, we'll use this word parsing, and we'll start parsing in the homework assignments and different things along those lines. When parsing happens, what we're really just trying to do is we're just trying to give the stem, the conjugation or the form, the person, the gender, the number, and then the root of the word. And so the way that we will talk about it is like that word zakarti is the cal perfect first common singular, meaning this means like I remembered, right? Zakar meaning remember, I remembered. Shamart is the cal perfect second feminine singular, or 2FS. We always abbreviate 2FS of shamar, which means you observed, and of course it's you, feminine singular observed, you observed. The negative particle lo is the last thing we want to talk about today. Perfect and imperfect verbs, which we're going to learn about next week, may be negated with the particle lo, meaning no or not. By negated, what that means is if you stick this in front of a word and it says like I kept, or here you kept, or observed, it means you did not observe. So it just turns it turns the phrase negative. So shamartem et hatorot would be you observed the laws, right? Shamartem et hatorot. That's what it would mean. But if you stick the lo in front of it, lo shamartem et hatorot, it is you did not observe the laws, or you did not keep the laws. Shamar meaning observe, or keep meaning follow, obey, really is the idea that shamar gives, right? So you did not observe. You did not keep the laws. And so you've got the et there, that's the definite direct object marker. You've got the word Torah, but it's plural, Torot there. So, or we've got this one, right? Zakarta, you remembered, right? But if you stick the lo on the front of it, in the front of it, lo zakarta, you did not remember et ha-barit, the covenant. So you've got zakarta, you, right? The second masculine singular of zakar, the Cal perfect second masculine singular of zakar. You remembered, and then the lo in front of it. So you did not remember, the definite direct object marker et, and then you've got the definite article ha in front of the word barit, which is covenant. You did not remember et ha barit, the covenant. So the word lo just makes it negative. That should be pretty simple. So if you see lo, it will always appear at the beginning. It will be placed immediately before the verb, and it just makes the whole phrase negative. It, as we say, negates the verb. All right, before you move on, the biggest thing that you need to focus on is that Cal paradigm. All right, katal, katala, katalta, katalt, and so on. Focus on that. I don't know that you need to memorize it so much as you need to be able to identify it, right? So be able to identify it. Focus on what's going on, how to pronounce it. Understand the basic translation value of the perfect. And we're going to really focus on just doing kind of a simple past tense for now, but know that it speaks mostly of completed action. So understand the idea of parsing. So with parsing, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get the stem, the conjugation, the person, the gender, and the number, and then the root of the word when you parse. Be able to identify and explain the difference between the transitive, intransitive, and stative verbs. After you've gotten all of these other things, you can look at that, and then just remember the slight variations in spelling on the stative. That's not a big deal. Honestly, I'm not even going to be really focused on or looking at the statives within the homework assignments, but just know that that is a true thing. All right, with that, let's look at the vocabulary. So barak is the word to bless. So this is just the Cal perfect third masculine singular. Barak means he blessed, right? And we've got, remember, if you see like the PI or the NI or the HI, it's talking about those other stems. And the PL, it means like someone would bless. And the nifil on the next one, right, to be remembered, it's more passive, and so on and so forth, if you remember those stems and how they work. Zakar, to remember. Chazak, to be or to be made strong. Can also be to like have courage. Yadat is the word to know. You've probably heard the phrase to know in the biblical sense. That comes across. That's how this word will be often used, talking about an intimate relationship. Kaved is the word for heavy or weighty, and yeah, so it's also the word that this root word is also going to be kind of the root word for glory as well. Kathav is to write, to register, or to record. To write, just think write as the main one. Malay is to be full or to fill up. Malak is to rule or to be king. So we've seen this root a lot, haven't we? Matzah is to find out. Pakad is to attend or pay attention to. Can also be to number or appoint. Shakav is to lie down. Shalach is to send or stretch out. Shamar is to watch or to keep. So shamar, to watch, keep, observe. Notice that there's a large, what we call semantic range for that word. And then some other things. Ko. So like the phrase Ko Amar Adonai is very common. So thus says the Lord, right? Ko Amar Adonai. Thus, Amar is another word for to say or to speak. Thus says Yahweh, right? Ko Amar Adonai. Cain is also the word thus or so. And then the word od, again, or as long as. Od, with the I in there at the beginning. I hope that this was helpful. Again, focus on the Cal-Perfect paradigm. When you're looking at that Cal-Perfect paradigm, don't get overwhelmed. Just notice that the ending changes, right? And with those ending changes, there are some similarities to things that we've seen before, like with the pronominal suffixes. They're not the exact same, but there are similarities with them, so it's not like you're learning everything new. And then just be able to look it up in a chart and say, oh, this means you remembered. Oh, this means I remembered. Oh, this means I wrote, when you see that ending on it and you've got the root word already down. Now, in the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God, and the fellowship of his Holy Spirit be with you all. Go in his peace.